Boys, we have made it halfway through the season. Cannot believe it. Week 10. Let's take a look. Stroud, obviously, with a huge week. Was your top scorer last week. Mitchell, unfortunately, is out of here. His wide receivers just couldn't pull it through. He had Laporta on bye, and Laporta was kind of a, building block of his team that was, consistent points, and not having that also hurt. So unfortunate to see it happen, but it is what it is. And for those of you that don't know, this was actually Mitchell's first ever fantasy league. He obviously follows football, but he had never been in a fantasy league before, so to throw him right into a Guillotine league was quite the challenge. So I think he did pretty good, all things considered. Lasted longer than me, so that says something. But 10th place, Mitchell. Top 25% of last week. We've got, obviously, Cooper and JC. Cooper with his first appearance on the slide on the entire year. It took halfway through the season for it to happen, but here he is. Average score of this group of 124. That's down pretty significantly, 9% from last week of 137. I'll bring this up on the next couple of slides as well, but I do think the buys played a lot into the low scoring this week. But, there were some big teams on by. Niners, Lions. Yeah. Other ones. You know how it is. The bottom 25% now. Surprisingly, Jack getting the trash can, and Ben on this slide as well. He was my prediction to get eliminated, but he survived. Made it without CMC. Average score of these guys of 88. That's down also 10% from last week of 98. A lot of dips this week, and we'll see that here on this chart. One of the lowest, the third lowest average of the top 25% at 124, and everything just kind of went down. These margins are getting very narrow, like I mentioned. Slowly but surely, these past 4 weeks has just gotten narrower and narrower. I think this will keep climbing. This bye week was rough, and actually week 10 is going to be rough as well. I'd imagine it should still go up though, just because one team gone, each team's a little better. I say that every week, but we'll still see dips. I think it'll stay pretty similar to this week, or maybe go up, but to be determined on that. This game is a yikes. That's really all I have to say. I think we only have 2 players in this game, and that's Thielen, Ryan has, and DJ Moore. Shoot, who has DJ Moore? Someone has DJ Moore. That would be Cooper. Cooper has DJ Moore. So those 2 guys will be watching this game tonight, I guess. Bears are favored for some reason, I guess because they're at home, but this game is just garbage. I don't know if you guys have seen the whole slate of primetime games, but the Sunday night game and Monday night games, and I'm obviously getting into the Monday night game on the next slide, they are no better. The Sunday night is Jets-Raiders, so that's an oof. I guess the theory behind that, and why that would have been interesting, is the Rodgers, Devontae Adams, return of seeing each other, but on different teams. I guess. So, yeah. And the Monday night, probably the best of the 3 games, but that's not saying much. Broncos at Bills. Broncos just upset the Chiefs. So maybe we have another upset brewing. The Bills are kind of stumbling right now. So maybe it could happen for real. Not a lot of Broncos players, just Javonte, and then a decent amount of Bills in starting lineups. You got Josh Allen, obviously Diggs, James Cook, Kincaid in the Bills defense. So this game could have a lot on the line on Monday night. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. Bills are obviously heavily favored, but yeah. Now the standings. It's nice and clean this week. All the people eliminated are actually at the bottom, which hasn't always been the case. And exactly half the people are gone now, and half the people are still alive. Not much changed, except for Jake finally passed Ben on total points scored on the year. Ben was kind of riding that 200-point week. It's kind of been holding him up here on this leaderboard, but Finally, it falls to Jake, and the only other major movement was Cooper, who obviously just had the highest scoring team last week. Jumps up 3, and everyone else stays the same. Yeah. Looking at the economy, Tom is sitting on that pile of cash, not spending it, and I don't know how intentional that is, but his team is all right, and he has the money to spend, so we'll see how he uses it. Ben, selling Christian McCaffrey, now has a bunch of fab to work with. I should say, Tom, by the way, 25% of the market share, and the average is 11%, $25. So more than double what everyone else has, or more than double the average of what everyone else has, which is kind of wild. Potter still has a bunch of money to spend. He spent a little bit this week. A lot of people didn't spend. I think like JC, Cooper, Jack, Ryan, besides the trade, didn't really spend. He spent a little bit. Jake got some fat back. Joey spent the rest of what he has. He's now at 0. Jake is now not at 0. He's got a little bit to work with. Only 224 left in circulation with half the season to go. So that's kind of crazy. It's like clearly we saw a lot of people not spending this week. It's like a lot of these people are getting very startable players for $0, and that's just because everyone spent so much in the beginning. So maybe fab, just because the market is so depleted, it's just like maybe having fab right now doesn't even matter. It does a little bit, but there's not that many teams for players to go around, so you can very easily get a serviceable starting player for 0 fab, is what it seems. Like I saw someone get Pacheco after waivers ran for $0. I'm in another Guillotine league, and I got Waddle after waivers ran just because he's on bye. I think people forgot about him, but / there's just not enough roster space to go around. So, yeah, that is where we're sitting with the market. Our market share, trending, elimination chart, whatever. We have another elimination below the average market share of Mitchell here, just barely below that market share line. So that's kind of been the trend lately, is that the good teams actually have fab still. Looking into this week, I mean, I know I'll get into my predictions, but there are actually a couple teams above the line that I think are in a little bit of danger this week, and I won't say who, I guess just for the suspense of it. And then there's obviously some below the line that I think are on the block as well. But yeah, I don't have a prediction this week for who I think, if I think it'll be above or below the line, but it doesn't really matter that much anymore. No one has a ton, so unless like Tom gets eliminated, nothing major is happening in the market, I don't think. Ben is another one, I guess you could say, because he just gained a bunch of fab and didn't make a bunch of acquisitions to make his team better. So if one of those two goes out, that'd be pretty significant for the market. Looking at this rivalry, Jake's been on a tear, won it 5 weeks straight. Weekly rank of 3 last week with 115. Ben getting 8th and getting an ice cube, getting 98. 98 gets you an ice cube now. Like, you got to score over 100 to really be safe. And Jake also, as we mentioned, passed Ben in overall running total points on the year. So, unless both of these guys survive to like the very end, Ben is not going to have this head-to-head. He's not going to catch up on the head-to-head record. But it's really just about who survives. That's the bigger bet here. But as it stands, Jake has bragging rights. And looking at each of their teams' positional rankings, 9th is going to be the worst. So Ben has a lot of worst in their respective position. I think he's got Purdy here, and I don't even know who his RB1 is right now. We'll get to that on his slide, but he's not looking great, and Jake has some weak spots, but also has a couple of good spots, like obviously having Lamar now, not Mahomes. He has Lamar and A.J. Brown. Those are his big, strong points, but the rest of his team is pretty average, or below average at this point in the year. So we'll see. We'll see who lasts longer. Our same old takeaways here. Tight ends. We had 2 top-scoring tight ends, and one of them was actually Mitchell's with Dalton Schultz. Right here, but that was not enough to save him. That was like his only bright spot on his team this week. And Yeah, so that was the high of the week, and we obviously have some low lows still. That might have been Kelsey, honestly. Kelsey might have had 2.9. He was either there or in this grouping here. Kelsey had a bad week, which was kind of very interesting, and hence why Jack got the trash can. But defenses, we did have a top scoring defense. I think it was the Browns scoring 24, and then two of them we saw in the top three. So a decent week for defenses. I guess when there's a lot of people on bye, tight ends and defenses have a chance to jump into those top scorers. And then looking at this week, a lot of buys again. Chiefs, Eagles, Dolphins, Rams. Those are some very significant teams with some very significant players. I know, we'll get into it, but Potter's got both Cup and Tyreek Hill on bye. You got Jake, who's got A.J. Brown, and he had Mahomes on bye before he traded him. There's a lot on bye. And if you're Joey, you got DeAndre Swift and Mostert on bye. Those have been his two top scoring running backs. So pretty significant buys this week. So I think it could shake things up if one of these top teams gets eliminated just because they have good players on bye. And then next week we got 4 buys again, but not as significant teams: Colts, Falcons, Saints, Patriots. That's no quarterbacks on bye. Yeah, there's really not a crazy amount of studs on those teams. Just like Kamara, Bijan, and JT, Michael Pittman. Like, those are the only names I'm pulling out of there that are that significant. So weeks 11 and 12 having no bye weeks, should see some pretty, like, the actually bad teams getting eliminated and not just a good team getting eliminated because of buys. So yeah, we'll see. The Grim Reaper slide, not much new here. CeeDee Lamb and DK Metcalf are still the only people that have eliminated 3 teams. But some new names on this list: Tua and Brian Robinson and Elijah Moore now have 2 eliminations. Ben picked up Brian Robinson. Ryan picked up Tua. No one has Elijah Moore, and probably rightfully so. I don't think Ryan's starting Tua, so the only new person here that's being started, I think, is Ben starting Brian Robinson because he's in a tough spot for running backs. I mean, Brian Robinson's fine. He was not the reason, really. Mitchell, or I think it was Saunders before it got eliminated. So some of these people on here are just coincidental, but I'm curious to see if by the end of the year there's someone with like 6 or 7. So yeah, let's keep it rolling. The graphs here, starting with the week 4 rating versus rest of season. Nothing too crazy here. JC, Ryan, Jack, and Joey. Joey kind of in a different tier from the rest of these guys, a lower tier, I should say. But they're all in the both good. Potter with an insanely good rest of season outlook. That's because he has Tyreek Hill, and he'll eventually have Justin Jefferson coming back, who I heard he was practicing this week, so we'll see how that goes. He's got Mahomes on bye. He's got Cooper Kupp on bye. But this week, with all those guys on bye, he is not in a good spot. He is the second lowest projected scorer this week, according to Fantasy Pros. Just second to Jake. Ben also with a pretty bad look this week, and really not a good outlook for the rest of the season either. Losing McCaffrey hurts that category. Tom and Cooper in not great positions, but not the worst. Yeah, that's that chart. And Fantasy Pros versus Sleeper, this week's projection, same 4 up in the top right: JC, Ryan, Jack, Joey. Cooper, where's Potter? Yeah, Potter's down here, second lowest projection on Fantasy Pros, third lowest on Sleeper. Cooper has a better projection on Sleeper than he does Fantasy Pros, but that's the only one where it really differs. Tom, Ben, Jake, Potter, all still in the red here. They're in the red in both of these. No, Potter's new. Potter's new to this red category, but he just has a bad projection for this week with all his buys, so he's in a little bit of a tough spot, but if he can make it out of this week, he should be just fine. As you know, he has been my week over week projection to win the league, so this is a tough week for him, but we'll see how he does. And now finally, the position strength versus budget. Only 2 in the green are JC and Potter. Both these teams have really strong positions. position strength and still have money to spend. Tom's still sitting up here with a lot of money to spend, and his team is below average, but not the worst. Ben's team being the weakest team here, but he has the second most fab in the league. He's opting not to spend it this week unless he makes a trade before the week starts. But right now, Ben is sitting at a pretty weak team. Jack and Ryan also with strong teams, but not as much fab to spend. Ryan just acquiring CMC, and Jack, he's just had a good team. I think he's been here in this category before. He just doesn't have a lot of fab to spend. And Joey finally slipped all the way back into the red here on position strength. Like I said, he spent early on some guys, but because he didn't have a lot of fab, he hasn't been able to continually really improve his team, so he's been sliding down this position strength x-axis this entire year, and now he's finally fallen into the red, and he has 0 fab left to spend, so his team is kind of what it is now. I could see him getting eliminated within, say, 4 weeks, but I think there's people that will go before him unless he has a really off week. That's why I have a hard time seeing a long-term... I have a hard time seeing long-term success from Joey in the position he's at, unless he somehow goes and gets fab by trading a player. And then Cooper and Jake in the red as well here. Don't have a lot to spend. All right, so not a ton changed here. I moved Jake down from top left to bottom left, and I moved Potter down from top right to bottom right, just because, like I said, I've already said it, the buys are really tough for him this week, so he still has a good long-term projection, but this week he is absolutely in a tough spot. Definitely not safe at all this week. And Jake, being in the red in all categories, it's kind of a no-brainer. He trades away Mahomes to give himself a solution for this week. And, Lamar is obviously good generally long-term too, but Mahomes is better. So I think Jake is hoping that can buy him safety this week. So it's not the worst move. He gets a little bit of fab too. Also gets rid of Kyron, who I don't know if he comes back how much he'd really be used. Probably will be. And Ben is still down here. As we've seen, his team is not that strong. It's serviceable, I would say. So he can very much survive with it, but he's also not safe by any means. No one's safe by any means. But that's my take on Ben. He no longer has McCaffrey, as we mentioned, but he has no one major on bye this week that's on his team. So that's good for him. Jake, as we know, also has A.J. Brown on bye this week. When he comes back, he'll be in a better spot. Joey, obviously staying here. He spent the rest of his fab to get James Cook. He is a very solid team right now, I will say. But like I said, in 4 weeks, that's not going to be the case. And, I've also said you can get good players for 0 fab. So maybe we'll see what he can do with 0 fab. I think there is a lot you can do with 0 fab, surprisingly, just because the market is so depleted. And then top right, I know I'm kind of going in a random order here. JC, he just has Hurts on bye. He's filling it in with Dak. He made a trade with Ben to get Dak for Javonte Williams, which is kind of a win-win for both of them. Ben got Javonte Williams to fill in as a starter for him. And I'm pretty sure Javonte was on JC's bench, or at least was like a borderline bench / flex play. So he traded away a bench player to get his starting quarterback, and Ben traded away one of his 2 quarterbacks to get a starting running back for himself. So, I think I think Javonte, it's hard to say because Dak's been kind of hot. It's a fair trade. We'll see how it plays out. But JC also is getting Debo back, and he's got a solid core. And he has a good amount of fab left to spend, so I think JC is still in a prime position here. Ryan, we know he got McCaffrey. He's getting Montgomery back. So now he kind of has this elite running back trio of Montgomery, Christian McCaffrey, and Eckler. Maybe you don't consider those guys all elite, but that's a pretty solid trio there, I would say. Ryan has Tua, Waddle, and Devonta Smith on bye. He doesn't have a lot of fab left to spend, but his team's really solid. And 11 isn't nothing, so it's not nothing to spend. He's still in a great spot. And Jack, he's got Kelsey and Puka and he picked up Pacheco, but he's on bye, so those three are on bye. He's got a solid team. He has a really solid team. He's got guys to start in place of those guys on bye, so he should be fine. I think he's still in a solid overall team. I don't think he's in as much of a bad spot as Potter is this week, who, I normally had Potter here, but I dropped him down here because I think he's in a really bad spot this week. But yeah, Jack still has a little bit of money to spend too. I think 15, something like that. So he's in a good spot. Potter, he's got good fab. Like I said, tons of buys. He also has tough matchups for his starters. Underrated move from earlier this season, acquiring James Conner, I think, for $0 and stashing him on his IR. James Conner is now projected to be back this week, and that will be huge. We'll see how the Cardinals' offense is now that they have nothing going for them with Clayton Tune. Maybe Kyler will come back soon. Who knows? James Conner is an interesting one to keep an eye on. He's starting him this week, I believe, with all the buys he has. And Justin Jefferson's practicing, so Potter just needs to make it past this week. He just needs to scratch and claw and scratch his way out of this week, and he will still be in a great spot. But if there's a week for him to get eliminated, it's this week. Not to make him panic, but there's other people too that are definitely on the block. Cooper, I think he's still in a tough short-term position, but he has 20 fab for the future. He has Josh Allen, who's always going to carry him to some extent. He needs a tight end this week. He does not have a starting tight end on his team right now, so we'll see. I know he'll obviously pick someone up, someone serviceable. There's serviceable tight ends on the waivers right now, so he'll be fine. And he has no one on bye this week, but I still think he's in a tough spot regardless. All it takes is a bad week from Josh Allen, and he's in a really tough spot. That's what I think. And Tom, finally, he has the most fab, as we know, and has a good enough team to survive, but he's still not that safe in the short term, I don't think. He's not safe this week. He's not really safe any week until he improves his team and spends his fab, but he has the fab, so he still has a promising long term. That's where his 0.5 points are coming from, is being up here, just in the fab category. So he's arguably in here, but I think he has a stronger team than both Ben and Jake, and he has more fab than them, so he's in an okay spot. But I think these 5 are your candidates to get eliminated this week. But obviously we'll get to my hot takes when we get to them. Now going into each team, Cooper, as we mentioned, getting his first star, his first time in the top 25% at all this year. I think he was one of the only ones. I'm actually going to check as we go through the slides who doesn't have either a bottom or a top 25% appearance. I think everyone has an appearance in both at this point in the season, so we'll see. But Josh Allen, huge week. They played the Bengals, and obviously I watched that game, like all of it. I didn't feel like he had that good of a game, but 26 fantasy points. He always puts up the numbers. The rushing touchdown helps. Josh Jacobs, Ramondre Stevenson, really solid weeks. He makes no moves this week. He is just sticking with his guys. He's obviously going to acquire a tight end before the week starts, so that'll be his acquisition. But he's got a really solid core here. He's got DJ Moore tonight. A lot of green here, so a lot of good looks for Cooper here. Yeah, I think he's in a decent spot. Decent spot here. Now JC, he's been on a tear. Almost had 3 straight first place performances, but just second place this week. Big week from Rachaad White. It was fun to see that happen. I've got Rachaad White in my other Guillotine league, so love to see it. Jalen Hurts and CeeDee Lamb with good weeks as well. They've been killing it. Hurts on bye this week. He acquires Dak Prescott and trades away Javonte Williams. I don't think he was starting Javonte Williams because he's got DeAndre Hopkins here instead. It looks like would be the only candidate I think to start Javonte over. But really solid team. ETN, Saquon, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar. Got to monitor that Jamar injury. It's a back injury, which isn't good. I've heard some people theorize that the Bengals have the Ravens in 2 weeks, so maybe you bench Jamar so he's healthy for that. You don't want to push him. Even with Jamar out, then you just move Hopkins up, and I think he's got plenty of guys on his bench that can fill in So, yeah, not having Jamar would suck for JC, but he would still be fine. Who else does he have? He could throw in Debo Samuel. Yeah, dude, he's got Debo Samuel on his bench. So Jamar's out, he's fine. He's got tons of depth. Top to bottom here. JC's got a good team. I'm a fan of it. Now Jake coming in third. Almost a fifth straight top 25% performance, but not quite. Just missed it. He had no studs this week. 18 points was his highest score, but he had a bunch of double. Almost everyone was in the double digits, and that's always helpful for overall scoring. He trades away Mahomes and Kyron to get Lamar and 9 fab, so that gives him a quarterback to start this week, and a pretty serviceable one, pretty decent, pretty solid one. I don't know where I want to put Lamar in terms on the overall. I don't think he's a guy you'd start in the championship, but he's a guy you'll start for the next 4 or 5 weeks at least. He has had 2 bad weeks back to back, so we'll see if he bounces back. And he also gets fab now. He had 0, and now he has 9, so that's good. And he gets Tank Dell, who looks like he's starting him in his flex for $0. He's got just a very average team all around, and I'm realizing, as you know, these are number 1 through 9, so some of these that are 8, 7, those really should be red because 9 is the worst, but because it thinks there's 18 people in the league, it thinks that's around the middle of the pack. But so his team is actually really kind of not great, but it could be good enough to survive this week. Not having AJ Brown's going to hurt. If Lamar puts up another kind of bad performance, below 20 points, then it could be tough. It could be a tough week for Jake, and he needs to pick up defense as well, but that's not a huge issue. Now Joey, not much done here. Like I said, he spent his last $4 on James Cook, who he will start because he has Mostert and Swift on bye, so that's a good spot start for him. But honestly, with all those other guys back, I don't see him starting James Cook outside of a flex 2 maybe, if he has other buys in coming weeks. But yeah, like I said, he's got a really solid team. This has been his team basically since the beginning of the year. Not much has changed. He's just made a couple big acquisitions, like acquiring Diggs, acquiring Pittman, acquiring Herbert, because Kirk got hurt. But a lot of these people he drafted, like Pollard and Amari Cooper and Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews. So yeah, in 4 weeks, I would say the only studs he has are Stephon Diggs and Mark Andrews. Everyone else is just good, and I like the teams right now that have the studs, because then they don't have to worry about figuring out how to acquire these studs before the final week. They already have them, and then they just need to build upon that. And by studs, I mean guys that you would start in the championship probably. From here, I'm only seeing Diggs and Mark Andrews in my opinion. Although Pollard is great, but he's been kind of underperforming. James Cook, not a stud. Amari Cooper, good, but not a stud. Marquise Brown, good, but not a stud. Same with Herbert. So that's why I think I don't like the long-term projection of Joey's team, but the short-term, he's the definition of good in the short term, questionable in the long term. So we'll see. We'll see what he does with that 0 fab now, though. Ryan's team, he capitalized on Ben panic trading CMC. So while he did spend 75% of the fab he had left, 33 on CMC, now he only has 11. Now Ryan has a stud. There's a stud for Ryan. I think he's got 2, maybe you could say 3 stud running backs. CMC, Eckler, Montgomery is the maybe. Montgomery's been great. If he just, I don't know. I don't know if he's a championship week starter. And then Ryan's receivers, I don't think he has any studs at receiver. Ayuk, maybe. He's been really good, but he's got a lot of good receivers. Really solid receivers. So he'll have to address that eventually, but they're enough to keep him safe for now, for sure. And Hawkinson's obviously great, so that's good. But yeah, Ryan does not have a bunch of fab left, but I think he's in a great spot here. Now Potter's team, I've mentioned he is in a tough spot this week. Here's one of your top scoring tight ends last week, Jake Ferguson, big week for him. He moves on from him though and gets Laporta, which is a good move, I think. Laporta's great. Also gets Trevor Lawrence to start this week because he traded away Lamar to get Mahomes, which I love that move. He got Lawrence for free, so a great spot start there. And then having Mahomes for the future, having Kyron for the future as well. I could see Kyron being his like RB2, RB3 if he needs a third RB. His only weak spots are at wide receiver, and this goes back to my take that I think he's in a bad spot this week. He's got okay, like Devontae Adams, Deontay Johnson. Those are great receivers. Nico Collins, great receiver. I just think they have tough matchups this week. I mean, Devontae Adams playing the Jets. They've got like the best corners in the league. So maybe he gets locked up, and bad quarterback play is surely not helping him. And Nico Collins has the Bengals. We've seen the Bengals shut out some receivers. Gabe Davis last week. So that's a potential bust right there. And then Deontay Johnson, he's been really good, so it's hard to say he'd be bad this week. And then James Conner coming off an injury, we'll see how he does. That is bust potential just because we don't know. There's a lot of unknown there with the Cardinals' offense. But obviously I like Kamara, and Jerome Ford is good too. Trevor Lawrence is a fine play. They're playing the Niners though. That's a little tough, and they're coming off a bye and they're on a slump, so maybe they're ready to bounce back. Yeah, I think Potter's in a bit of a tough spot this week. But he has fab to spend, and he's got studs on bye. So he makes a pass this week, then he is back in a perfectly safe position, I'd say. And now, before I get into the next slide, I have made a little meme video, and this is for Tom's slide. So here you go.
Every now and then I get a little bit tired, listen to the sound of my tears. Around. Every now and then I get a little bit nervous that the best of all the years have gone by.
Turn around. Every now and then I get a little bit terrified, and then I see the look in your eyes.
Turn around, bite eyes. Every now and then I fall apart.
And I need you now tonight, and I need you more than ever.
I assume you guys could have seen that one coming. If you haven't seen that meme format before, I love it. I thought it applied perfectly to Tom's team last week. Stroud putting up 42. Huge week. Obviously, he had two other decent players in JT and Olave, but the rest of his team was really mediocre. But Stroud held him up. He scored 101 with 42 coming from Stroud. And Mitchell scored, 74? So if Stroud just puts up like 15 points instead of 42, Tom was right in the mix of getting eliminated last week, so Stroud came in huge. That trade to get him is looking good. Crazy. If Tom still had Herbert last week, Herbert put up 7 points. So Tom had Herbert in the lineup. He's eliminated this week, so that move for Stroud ended up being a big one. Stroud has the Bengals this week. As much as I'd want to say I think the Bengals could give him a welcome to the NFL moment, bring him down to earth. I don't know if that's going to happen. Stroud's looked really good. I was in the camp of Ohio State quarterbacks just suck, and they're not good in the NFL. He's a rookie. The Texans aren't good. All the above, but he's proven me wrong in every aspect. So I'm a little nervous about Bengals Texans this week, but I'm hoping we can give him a welcome to the NFL moment. And if we do, then maybe Tom's on the block this week. But if Stroud can keep putting up these numbers, then Tom's probably looking pretty good. Jonathan Taylor and Kenneth Walker are going to continue to be studs. Kenneth Walker just had a bad week. They played the Ravens. I think he'll bounce back for sure. Kittle's fine. Just the receivers that are a little shaky. Olave, Chris Godwin, and Pickens. All these guys have shown the potential to be busts on any given week, so you got to hope that doesn't happen. Tom makes no moves. Maybe he will before Sunday, but he didn't make any claims with any of his fab that he could have. So he's just hoping to make it another week, I think, and maybe he'll start spending. It's hard to say, though. Hard to say. He's got 4 ice cubes in a row. Not necessarily 4 weeks in a row, but without getting any top appearances in between. So that's Tom. And now, he actually didn't even have an ice cube that week, so never mind. Now we're getting into the ice cubes. Starting with Ben, gets third to last. He survived, and I think good for him for surviving. I think this was the week, or last week was the week he really could have gotten eliminated without Christian McCaffrey, but Dak has come in huge. Taysom Hill has come in just huge for everyone. I have him in another league. I love Taysom Hill. I actually think Taysom Hill, if he continues his production, and I don't see the Saints stopping using him as much as they have been. I think Taysom Hill is like the second best tight end to start besides Kelsey. And we've even seen Kelsey have bad weeks like last week. So Taysom Hill could be the best tight end to start in the league with his versatility that he can throw the ball, catch the ball, run the ball. Like, he's getting points in some way. And they use him on the goal line a lot. So if they keep using him, I think Taysom is literally a startable tight end in the championship. Maybe that's a hot take, but I like Taysom, and I think Taysom gives Ben some breathing room, considering the rest of his team is a little bit underwhelming. I don't think this is accurate. I don't think he's actually starting Evan Ingram here. I think he is starting Taysom. I think he'd be crazy not to. Where I have concern about his team is he has very just average wide receivers, very average running backs, and I am worried about Gibbs going back to his kind of backup role to Montgomery, where he's only going to get single-digit points. But I have him in another league, so obviously I want Gibbs. I want Gibbs to be good. I hope he is, but I just can't guarantee it with Montgomery coming back. So, but he has a lot. I mean, he has Brian Robinson. He's got depth at running back, and just very okay receivers, good defense, very okay quarterback. But he has the money to spend, and I think he's just trying to hold out another week. I think he thinks this is just enough to survive with this team, and then, the longer you hold on to Fab, the more valuable it becomes. So it's a dangerous game. But Ben's playing that dangerous game, and we'll see if it works out for him. And now getting the trash can was Jack, as we mentioned. His top scorer was the Browns' defense. Burrow had a good week. Aaron Jones had a good week. He acquires 3 guys for 0 fab: Pacheco, Schultz, and the Raiders' defense. He's starting Schultz in place of Kelsey, and he's starting the Raiders' defense, I believe, over the Browns, because the Browns have the Ravens, and that's a tough matchup. So he holds on to his 15 fab, makes some acquisitions for free to have some spot starts, and he's got a solid core, so it's hard to argue with anything here. I think this is Calvin Ridley. I don't know if he's actually starting him, but that's the only questionable piece here, I would say. And Bijan, I guess, is also somewhat a questionable piece, just because the Falcons are idiots. No, Arthur Smith is an idiot. I don't know if you guys saw the thing that he said when he was asked in an interview, because I think someone was obviously asking, like, hey, why aren't you getting Bijan involved? And he said, he makes impacts away from the ball that are really good. It's like, okay, sure, but he's elite. Give him the ball. Put the ball in his hands. Same with Pitts, same with Drake London. Like, the dude is an idiot. So that's the only reason I'm concerned about Bijan. I think Bijan's a great player. I just think Arthur Smith is an idiot. I don't know. Maybe you guys agree with me, Arthur Smith is pissing me off greatly, because I have Bijan in 2 other leagues, and it's killing me. Yeah, that is it for Jack. And now one last look at Mitchell's team. Schultz with a huge week, but besides that, it was a pretty underwhelming week. Tua with 12, Brian Robinson with 11. These are actually the only 2 people from Mitchell's team that got picked up. Actually, that's not true, because James Cook got picked up. But that is about it. He made a great choice to pick up Schultz going into the week. Going into Thursday, he did not have a tight end yet, and then he picked up Schultz, and Schultz was his highest scorer, so it gave him a chance, but it was not enough. His wide receiver core was not enough with Gabe Davis. He did not end up starting Josh Downs. It was Gabe Davis and Boyd and Elijah Moore, which he did end up starting the right 3. Well, actually, that's not true. Gabe Davis had 0. Josh Downs got hurt after getting a 1.5. So any combination of those receivers was not going to get him through this week, unfortunately. But it's just how it goes sometimes. It was tough. He died with 25 fab, so I was right around the middle of the pack. So he gets 10th place. Now my hot takes, and what time are we at? 39 minutes? Okay, I can do this. I was going to try to keep it under 45. There's no reason at all I should come close to 45, but I actually am going to come close to 45. We're going to do this. Hot takes. Keep it at the same. Potter is still my hot take to win the whole thing. I said he's in a tough spot this week, but I'm not changing my take on that. I think he'll win the whole thing. I think if he survives this week, there's no reason he can't win the whole thing. He has the fab. He has the players. He's got studs. Just just good all around. And then I'm keeping also my honorable mention the same with Ryan. He gets CMC. I don't love that he doesn't have a lot of fab, but I think there's a lot you can do with a little fab at this point. So I think he's still in a prime position. One of these times maybe I'll put JC in here. I know I love JC's team and he has fab, so it's hard to not put him here, and maybe it's disrespectful, but just know I do also really like JC's team, but I can't. It's not a hot take if I'm saying, oh, this is, I gotta make my hot takes. It's already a stretch that I'm giving honorable mentions, but prediction to get eliminated, I've got Jake. I think he has tough matchups. I've already gone over this. He's got A.J. Brown on bye. He moves on from Mahomes, which doesn't really matter for this week because he has Lamar, but Lamar is playing the Browns. The Browns have good defense. He's got other tough matchups that I don't love. To point some of them out, Gus Edwards also against the Browns. Gus Edwards only got 5 carries last week, and I know that's because they got up early and then they put in Keaton Mitchell, but against the Browns, I think the Browns have a very good run defense, and yeah, he's got Njoku starting against the Ravens. I don't like that either, but you got to do what you got to do. His receivers are the part of his team that need to carry him this week. But Tank Dell's another who I think has a tough matchup against the Bengals, and Jordan Addison's got a tough matchup against the Saints. It's not looking great, so he's got to make something happen this week, but he is my prediction to get eliminated. And honorable mention, call me crazy, but I have Potter at the honorable mention, even though I have him as my prediction to win it all. It's kind of a double-edged sword where I think if he makes it past this week, he's still, in my mind, the guy I think will win it. But he could also get eliminated this week if things don't go his way. The bye weeks are tough. So we will see how that plays out, but that's my take. And now my power rankings. Not a ton changed. I flipped Ryan and Potter at 3 and 4. Maybe a little bit of recency bias there, but Ryan gets CMC. Potter is in a tough spot this week with buys, although this is a overall outlook, not just a this week outlook. I think CMC bumps Ryan ahead of Potter, even though Potter still has a ton of fab compared to Ryan, so there's room for that to switch. I kept Joey at 5, Cooper at 6, Tom at 7. I had Mitchell at 10 last week, and he's gone, and then I flipped Ben and Jake at 8 and 9. I think Ben he has almost no studs. He has the fab, and that's it, so he has to make something happen with that fab, but as it stands, I can't say Ben's team is better than Jake's. He just has fab. Although I am, taking fab into account. But until Ben does something with that fab, I can't bump him higher than last right now. But he's not on my prediction or honorable mention to get eliminated this week, although he is right on the edge there, I would say. So, yeah. That is it. We kept it under 45 minutes. Go me. I could probably shave even more time off of this, but I just like to talk. Yeah. Good luck, everyone. Don't get eliminated. You're halfway through.